Okay. You got your tea?
It is steeping currently.
Oh, what are you drinking?
The Cheshire Smile from Friday afternoon teas.
I am drinking your tea. Blueberry Wild Child. Yes, the tea. I have some peach crystallite. Because tea's hot.
Tea is hot.
And I have some French toast cut into soldiers.
Fun.
So, I am Rhett the Best.
I'm Kit Kinetic.
And I'm waving at my computer as if it's recording video.
It could be, but I don't want to.
Wow, too many reaction videos. An episode that is a Lit Bits.
Mm-hmm. Our Lit Bits episode is basically a shorter literati episode, usually hosted by Rhett.
Hi.
There's gonna be 4 segments in this episode. It's a Devil's Dictionary definition, a fairy tale, usually grim because that's how we roll.
Except today.
A myth, and a poem. Not necessarily in that order. We'll see how it rolls out. The ingredients of Cheshire Smile are white tea, grapefruit peel, blue pea flower, hibiscus, natural lemon, and vanilla flavorings.
Here we go. The Devil's Dictionary. Ambrose Pierce. I think the beginning is a good place to start. What do you think? For the first entry in the Devil's Dictionary.
All right.
Abandon. To confer the advantage of being rid of you. To recant. Thank heaven I've abandoned the follies of youth for those of age, by Chauncey Depew. To correct an erring friend or admonish a needy one. Of women, the word abandoned is used in the sense of indiscreet.
Uh-huh.
Confer the advantage of being rid of you.
Moving on to our fairy tale.
Yeah. I have this book here, which is the Anointed Classic Fairy Tale.
It is not anointed, it is annotated. I mean, I anointed it while I've been away.
I have. It was a laying on of hands ceremony. It was very touching.
Thus being a laying on of hands ceremony.
Right? Yes, by Charles Perrault.
Perrault? Mm-hmm.
Book I have is the Annotated Classic Fairy Tales.
And possibly anointed.
Possibly anointed. So there's like other parts to it, like a little intro, and then there's pictures with like captions underneath them. So our first story from the Anointed Annotated book is Bluebeard. This story was chosen by Kit. It is the reason why I'm drinking blueberry tea.
There's a reason why I've got blue pea flower in my tea.
Is there a reason why you chose Bluebeard?
Because, frankly, Bluebeard as a fairy tale does not get enough love. Disney hasn't touched it. So most people, unless they happen to actually like fairy tales, don't know of its existence. And it's a little different than most fairy tales. There's very little in the way of magic. And it's kind of horror-like.
It's an interesting one.
It is.
The first annotation is on the title itself.
Awesome.
Bluebeard. Beards were not fashionable in Perrault's time, and Bluebeard's monstrous growth of shadowy color marked him as an outsider and a libertine. Exotic beard inspired a number of interpretations that cast Bluebeard in the role of an Oriental tyrant. Edmund Dulac's illustrations set the tale in the Orient, with Bluebeard sporting a turban while his wife lounges with other women in what appears to be a harem. Many authors who took up the story set the tale in the East and gave the wife the name Fatima.
Huh.
And there's a bit of an introduction. Known as Silvernose in Italy and as the Lord of the Underworld in Greece, the French Bluebeard has many folkloric cousins. The blue in his beard tips the reader off to his exotic and otherworldly nature. Villains all have blue fire, blue or green. This is a man who is justifiably spurned as a husband despite his wealth and power. With its raised sabers, forbidden chambers, corpses hanging from hooks, and bloody floors, Bluebeard is the stuff of horrors. And although it has a happy ending, it is more of a cautionary tale about marriage than a celebration of marital bliss. Perrault takes us beyond happily ever after into a post-marital nightmare.
It's one of those after the happily ever after things.
Right? Cultural historians have pointed out that Perrault's Bluebeard may be based on fact. It broadcasts the misdeeds of various noblemen, among them Cunmar of Brittany and Giles de Reyes. Neither Cunmar, the accused, who decapitated his pregnant wife Fanny, or Giles de Reyes, the Marshal of France, who was hanged in 1440 for murdering hundreds of children, present themselves as compelling models for Bluebeard. This French aristocrat remains a construction of collective fantasy, a figure firmly anchored in the realms of folklore. The Bluebeard story has traditionally been seen as turning on the curiosity of the wife who can never resist temptation to look into the chamber forbidden to her. Perrault, too, presents Bluebeard's wife as a figure who suffers from an excess of desire for knowledge, a woman who makes the near-fatal mistake of disobeying her husband. In his moral of the story, Perrault aligns the intellectual curiosity of Bluebeard's wife with the sexual curiosity of women in general, thus hinting that his protagonist is very much a daughter of Eve, by underscoring the heroine's kinship with a certain literary, biblical, and mythical figures, most notably Psyche, Eve, and Pandora. Perrault gives us a tale that willfully undermines a robust folkloric tradition in which the heroine is a resourceful agent of her own salvation. Rather than celebrating the courage and wisdom of Bluebeard's wife in discovering the dreadful truth about her husband's murderous deeds, Perrault and many other tellers of the tale disparage her unruly act of insubordination. Bluebeard, which is focused on post-marital conflicts, serves as a reminder that fairy tales and folk tales are rooted in an adult culture. These stories were told around the fireside, in the kitchen, to lighten the labors of those living in an earlier age. They encapsulate collective truths, the wisdom of the ages about romance, courtship, marriage, divorce, and death. They are passed on from one generation to the next. Gossip as gospel truth, these stories, often referred to as old wives' tales, represent a buried narrative tradition, one that flowed largely through oral tributaries as women's speech until it was appropriated by editors and collectors who channeled it into print culture. I did not know where the term old wives' tale came from.
Neither had I.
Makes sense, though.
Yep.
Okay. That was the introduction. Sorry for those of you who do not know Bluebeard, but there was some spoilers in it. Okay, so on to the story. It's not an incredibly long story,
but the language is archaic, which makes it kind of difficult to read sometimes.
There once lived a man who owned grand houses, both in the town and in the country. His dinner services were of gold and silver, his chairs fitted with fine tapestries, his coaches covered with gold. This man also had the misfortune of having a blue beard. The beard made him look so ugly and frightening that women and girls alike fled when they set eyes on him. A respected woman who lived nearby had 2 daughters who were real beauties. The man asked for the hand of one, but he left it up to the mother to choose which of the 2 he would marry. Neither of the girls wanted to accept the proposal, and they passed the offer back and forth between them, for neither one could bring herself to marry a man with a blue beard. That the man had already married several women added to their sense of revulsion. No one knew what had become of the previous wives. In order to strike up a friendship with the family, Bluebeard threw a party for the 2 girls and their mother, along with 3 or 4 of their closest friends and a few young men who lived near one of his country houses. The festivities lasted an entire week. Each day there were parties, hunting, fishing, dancing, and dining. The guests were so busy cavorting and carousing that they never slept a wink. Everything went so well that the younger of the 2 sisters began to think that the beard of the lord of the manor was not so blue after all, and that he was in fact a fine fellow. As soon as they got back to town, the 2 celebrated their marriage. After a month had gone by, Bluebeard told his wife that he had to go on a trip to take care of some urgent business in the provinces. He would be away for at least 6 weeks. He urged his wife to enjoy herself while he was away. If she liked, she could invite her close friends to go out to the country house, anything to keep her in good spirits. He gave his wife a ring with keys on it and said, "These are the keys to the 2 large storerooms where I keep my gold and silver. Here are the ones to the caskets where I store my jewels. And finally, this is the master key to all the rooms in my mansion. As for this particular key, it opens the small room at the end of the long gallery on the ground floor. Open anything you want, go anywhere you wish, but I absolutely forbid you to enter that little room, and if you open so much as a crack, nothing will protect you from my wrath." The wife promised to follow exactly the orders given by her husband. Bluebeard gave his wife a farewell kiss, got into the carriage, and set off for his journey. Friends and neighbors of the young bride were so impatient to see the splendor of the house, they did not even wait for an invitation before coming to call. They had not dared visit while the husband was at home, because they were so frightened of his blue beard. They lost no time in exploring the rooms, closets, and wardrobes, each of which were more splendid and sumptuous than the last. Then they went upstairs to the storerooms. They could not find words to describe the beauty of the numerous tapestries, beds, sofas, cabinets, stands, and tables. There were looking glasses in which you could see yourself from head to toe. Their mirrors had frames of glass. Others were painted silver or lacquered. All of them were finer and more elegant than any that anyone had ever seen. The guests were envious of the friends' good fortune, and they praised everything they saw in the house. But the wife was unable to enjoy any of these riches because she was anxious to get into the room on the ground floor. She was so tormented by curiosity that, without stopping to think about how rude it was to leave her friends, she raced down the staircase so fast that more than once she was afraid she was going to break her neck. Tormented by her curiosity,
maybe she should slow the hell down.
Right? Seriously, it's just a room she has 6 weeks to do it in.
Yeah.
Tormented by her curiosity, there's a note. In Perrault's version of the story, as in many others, the curiosity of Bluebeard's wife is seen in a negative light. Many 19th century dramatizations of the story bore subtitles such as "The Consequences of Curiosity," "Hazards of Female Curiosity." Note that in this story, the wife's curiosity is so powerful that it nearly causes her to break her neck.
Multiple times over, it nearly causes her demise.
She's not a very smart woman.
No.
When she reached the door to the room, she stopped for a moment to think about how her husband had forbidden her to enter the room. She imagined what might happen to her if she were to disobey him. But the temptation was too great. She was unable to resist, and, trembling, she took the little key and opened the door. At first, she could not see anything, but the windows were shuttered. After a few minutes, it dawned on her that the floor was sticky with clotted blood. Worse yet, the pools of blood reflected the corpses of a number of women hanging from the walls. These were all the women Bluebeard had married and then murdered one after another. There's another note on married. All the women Bluebeard had married. Bluebeard's wives are usually 7 in number, which, like 3, is a popular figure in folklore. Interrogating the number in this story inevitably leads to the question of why the chamber was forbidden to the first wife. Films from the 1940s revived that Bluebeard story, showing the hazards of marrying men with a past. See, for example, Fritz Lang's Secret Beyond the Door, Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious, and George Cutter's Gaslight. Wife thought she was going to die of fright, and the key to the room, which she was about to pull out of the lock, dropped from her hand. After regaining her senses, she picked up the key, locked the door, and went back to her bedroom to pull herself together. But her nerves were too frayed for her to recover completely. When she noticed that the key to the room was stained with blood, she wiped it 2 or 3 times, but the blood would not go away. Was stained with blood. Another note. Folklorists describe this motif as blood-stained key as a sign of disobedience, ignoring the fact that the blood is a telltale sign that you should not be trusting your husband. Perrault's key is enchanted and, like the eggs and flowers and straws that come to be stained with blood in other versions of Bluebeard, resists attempts to remove stains. There's versions where she bloodies an egg. Or flowers. I mean, if it's something like an egg, flowers, or straw, why doesn't she just burn them? Hide the evidence that way?
She isn't the smartest girl, is she?
No, she's not. She's just really stupid. She tried to rinse it off and scrubbed it with sand and grit as well, but the blood stain would not go away because the key was enchanted and there was no way to remove the blood from it. When you got the stain off one side of the key, it came back on the other. That evening, Bluebeard came back from his journey unexpectedly and reported he had received letters on the way informing him that urgent business matters calling him away had been settled to his satisfaction. His wife did everything she could to make it appear she was delighted with his early return. The following day, he asked for the ring of keys and she returned them, but with a hand shaking so badly that he guessed right away what had happened. Why isn't that little key to the room here with the others? He asked. I must have left it upstairs on my dressing table, she replied. Don't forget to bring it right back to me, Bluebeard told her. She made one excuse after another, but finally she had to bring him the key. Bluebeard inspected it, then said to his wife, How did blood get on the key? I have no idea, the woman replied, and she turned pale as death. I have no idea, Bluebeard said, but I've got an idea. You tried to go into that little room. Well, madame, now that you have opened it, you can walk right back in and take your place beside the ladies whom you saw. The woman threw herself at her husband's feet, weeping and begging forgiveness with every sign that she felt genuine regret for disobeying him. This beauty in distress would have melted a heart of stone, but Bluebeard's heart was harder than stone.
Oh.
Madame, you must die, he declared. Your time has come. Since I must die, she replied, gazing at him, her eyes filled with tears. Give me just a moment to say my prayers. And there's another footnote here. Using her wits, Bluebeard's wife uses prayer as a pretext for delaying her execution. In some oral versions of the story recorded by folklorists, the wife sends a talking parrot or dog back home to fetch help. So she's not completely stupid.
Just mostly.
Yeah, I mean, if I saw a room filled with dead women that my husband presumably killed, I would run.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been there when he got home. But I believe she was supposed to have had like some sort of house party going on at the same time, correct?
Yeah, she had a bunch of women or a bunch of relatives or something came to inspect the house. It doesn't actually say that they were still there when Bluebeard returned.
Right.
Or when they left. So, as soon as they left, I would be gone. Or I would tell all the members of the party.
I would be leaving with them.
Right? Or I would tell them what I discovered so that other people would know.
It's like, hey, come here, come look at this shit.
Look what I just found.
This fucker's insane.
Get me out of here.
Right.
And he's not very smart either, because he just leaves corpses hanging on the walls. I mean, clean that shit up. Without forensic evidence in that time, I mean, he would have gotten away free.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the story. I will give you a quarter of an hour, Bluebeard replied, but not a second longer. When the wife was alone, she called for her sister and said to her, Sister Anne, for that was her name, I beg you, go to the top of the tower to see if our brothers are on the way here. And there's a note on the way here. Note that the brothers rescue their sister and return her to the original family. Bluebeard is unique in the way that it begins the marriage and moves the protagonist back to her first family, a reversal of the conventional trajectory of fairy tale heroes and heroines. How and when Sister Anne gets to the castle is not clear. So maybe the party was still going on, and he was just going to kill his wife during the party.
Yep.
I mean, he's not very smart either. He promised that they were coming to visit today. If you catch sight of them, send them a signal to speed them up. Sister Anne climbed to the top of the tower, and from time to time, the poor woman cried out to her, Anne! Sister Anne! Can you see anyone coming? Sister Anne replied, I see nothing but the sun shining and the green grass growing. In the meantime, Bluebeard picked up an enormous saber and shouted as loud as he could up to his wife, Come down here at once or I'll go up there. Just give me one more second, I beg you, his wife replied. And then she whispered loudly, Anne, Sister Anne, do you see anyone heading this way? I see a great big cloud of dust heading in this direction, replied Sister Anne. Is it our brothers? Oh no, sister dear, it's just a flock of sheep. Are you coming down here or not? Bluebeard roared. Just one more second, his wife replied. Then she called out, Anne, Sister Anne, do you see anyone heading this way? I see 2 horsemen heading this way, but they're still so far away, she replied. A moment later, she called out, Thank God, it must be our brothers. I'll send them a signal to hurry up. Bluebeard roared so loudly that the entire house shook. Poor wife coming downstairs in tears, her hair disheveled. She threw herself at her husband's feet. That won't do you any good, said Bluebeard. Prepare to die. Taking her by the hair with one hand and raising his saber with the other, he was getting ready to chop off her head. The poor woman turned to him and, with dimmed eyes, begged him to stop and give her a moment to prepare for death. No, Bluebeard said. Prepare to meet your maker. He lifted his arm. Just then there was a pounding at the gate so loud that Bluebeard stopped in his tracks. The gate was opened. 2 men on horseback, swords in hand, galloped in. Heading straight for Bluebeard, who realized the men, one a dragoon, the other a musketeer, must be his wife's brothers. He fled at once, hoping to escape. The 2 brothers showed no mercy and closed in on him before he could get to the stairs. They ran their swords through him and left him for dead. Bluebeard's wife was almost as lifeless as her husband. She barely had the strength to raise and embrace her brothers. It turned out that Bluebeard had left no heirs, and so his wife was able to take possession of his entire fortune. She used some of it to marry her sister Anne to a young gentleman who was deeply in love with her, and some of it went to buying commissions for her 2 brothers. The rest she used to marry herself to a very wealthy man. It helped her banish the memory of the terrible days she had spent with Bluebeard. In my head just now, I read she used some of it to marry her sister Anne. I inserted a period where the second comma should be in my brain.
I heard it. I was like, wait, what?
And I'm like, what? She married her sister. Also, Bluebeard was going to kill his wife with a witness. Because Anne was there. Bluebeard isn't smart.
No. Well, neither was his wife, so match made in hell?
Right? There is a footnote on a very wealthy man. Technically, we can speak of a happy ending to this particular tale, despite the hair-raising events in the story. Note that Bluebeard's wife is more successful in marriage when she brings a hefty dowry to it than when she marries for wealth. The story may have served as a cautionary fable to young women against marrying wealthy men with a past.
Or possibly a cautionary tale about marrying outside your station.
Could be too. There's also 2 morals at the end of this. Moral 1. Curiosity, with its many charms, can stir up serious regrets. Thousands of examples turn up every day. Women give in, but it's a fleeting pleasure. Once satisfied, it can cease to be. It always proves very costly. Second moral, take the time to stop and think. Ponder this grim little story. Surely you know that this tale took place many years ago. No longer are husbands so terrible, demanding the impossible, acting unhappy and jealous. They toe the line with their wives, no matter what color their beards. It's not hard to tell who is in charge.
Right.
So, this happened a long time ago, but men don't kill their wives nowadays.
What are you talking about?
Exactly.
There's a whole group of women with podcasts all about murder.
Right?
They're doing great things for the world.
It's an interesting story. Fun.
Yep. Not your typical A plus B plus fairy plot.
Right? Okay. What's next on the list? Myth. Okay. There was an epic burn.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Right?
And if you know nothing about peacocks, go ahead and look up a sound file of them sometime.
Right? I really like myths.
There is mention of a peacock and comparison of a woman to a peacock.
In All But Beauty.
In All But Beauty.
So in honor of that epic burn, I decided to tell the Greek myth of how the peacock got its
eye feathers.
I don't really want to say feathers because it already had the feathers. The pattern of the feathers, maybe?
They're called eye feathers.
Okay, eye feathers. How it got the eye feathers. And for this myth to happen, you have to know about Io. Well, Io, I think it's actually pronounced Io, but I'm used to Terry Pratchett, who has a god named Io, which is spelt the same way. So I might...
Io, as in like the Jupiter moon?
Yes. The letter I and the letter O. Io. Io. Whatever it is.
Let's find out. Oh, well, that's awesome.
But
apparently it translates from Greek to English as the word virus.
Okay.
Give me a second to reopen my volume mixer. I had people messaging me on Facebook, so I muted it. EO. Okay.
Is it pronounced EO?
Yep.
But like I said, in Terry Pratchett, it's pronounced IO. So I might switch between the two accidentally.
Yeah, whatever.
Sorry about that. Just warning you. And of course, there are some Greek names that I'm not super familiar with in this story. But we'll give it a go. Io, also known as Galathea, was a Greek maiden. In some versions, she is the daughter of the river god Inachus, In others, she is a priestess of Inachus. In others, she's a priestess of Hera. Doesn't really matter. She was a woman. Because she was a woman, Zeus wanted to have sex with her because he's Zeus.
Oh no, that wasn't because she was a woman. That's because she happened to have
Oh,
a place for him to do things.
right?
It does not matter, human or otherwise, with Zeus.
Right? She had a hole. He needed to stuff it.
He wanted to fill
Right?
it.
She said no, as any smart woman would do.
Oh.
And because she refused or insulted a god, her father cast her out. So here she is abandoned.
Bad
right?
dad.
Dad's an asshole too. And because of this, he, as in Zeus, took the opportunity to forcefully impregnate her, like he does.
So rape.
Yes, I'm trying to keep it PG and inform you that she actually does get pregnant, because that comes up later in the story. Hera noticed that something was going on, so she went to see what it was. Zeus decided to hide Io by turning her into a white heifer, because Zeus would never have sex with a cow.
Right. Didn't he become a cow? Well, bull.
I think he did at one point.
Yeah, the golden bull, I believe it was.
He also turned himself into a swan and a shower.
This is a fruit.
Right? He turned himself into a golden shower at one point. That's how Perseus was born.
Anyway, there's
Right?
a whole other tangent for a whole nother day.
And then, of course, there's the time when Hera had sex with a cloud. I think it was Hera. Anyway, Hera was so enamored of the heifer that she demanded Zeus give it to her. In some versions of the story, Hera knew it was a woman because Zeus would totally have sex with a cow and wanted to make someone suffer, so she pretended she didn't know. So Hera's a bitch. Hera set Argus Panoptus. There's a P and a T side by side. It translates to Argus, the all-seeing, not to be confused with Argo. Those are two completely different characters. Argus was a giant with 100 eyes, and he was set to watch over Io while she's in the form of a cow, a pregnant cow. Maybe because he felt sorry for Io, and maybe because he was hoping for round 2, Zeus went to Hermes, the god of messengers, tricksters, travelers, and pretty much anything that has to do with the roads. I think he was, thieves as well. He was like a miscellaneous god.
Yeah.
So Zeus asked Hermes to do him a favor and rescue Io. Hermes went to Argus in the guise of a goat herder and told Argus the story of how the panpipes came about while singing him a tune. The story of how the panpipes came about is basically Pan, the god of the wild and shepherds, wanted to have sex with a nymph named Syrinx.
Syrinx.
She said no and had someone, either a river god or Zeus, turn her into reeds. Pan was angry and smashed the reeds. He felt sorry and collected them, and when he was kissing the reeds, his breath fell over them and music sounded. So yeah, basically Hermes told Argus a story about rape in the middle of a story about rape.
Because Greek myth.
Right? The story, which Hermes made long and drawn out, and the lullaby he was singing made Argus fall asleep. When Argus nodded off, Hermes cut off his head.
Awesome.
Right? Hera, when she discovered this, became so enraged, she sent either a gadfly or a fury to attack Io. There's different versions of it. Sometimes it's a gadfly, sometimes it's a fury. Io fled. Of course she ran, She ran all around the Mediterranean. And she had several encounters while she was running around the Mediterranean.
Such as?
She crossed the Ionian Sea, a place that later became known as Bosporus, which means the Oxford, named after her. She met Prometheus, who was the titan that was imprisoned by Zeus for giving fire to mortals. He told her she would be the ancestor of the greatest hero ever. But at the end of this, I'll explain that she's actually the ancestor of many heroes. She met up with a guy named Lygdus and his pregnant wife Telethusa in Crete. They were too poor to pay for a daughter, because evidently they're more expensive than sons are. So Lygdus ordered Telethusa to kill their child if it was a girl. When a daughter was born, Io told Telethusa to tell her husband that the child was a son named Iphis.
What was that?
When a daughter was born, Io told Telethusa to tell her husband that the child was a son named Iphis, to raise her as a boy.
Okay.
Right? Io eventually ended up in Egypt, where Hera finally took pity on her and turned her back into a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Io had
Hera taking pity on women?
She had twin children from Zeus. Paphos, male, and Erosa. Erosa? Spelt different ways depending on where I found it. Io married a guy named Telegonus, which was a king of Egypt, and she was deified as the goddess Isis.
Okay.
So yeah, Isis was originally a Greek cow.
Moo.
Right?
I couldn't help it. I didn't even think about it. It just kind of came out. You said the word cow. I reacted.
Cow.
Moo.
Yay! Paphos, the son of Io, later became a king of Egypt, because his father was. Carosa, the daughter, was also deified, and she was named Apis, the sacred bull. She had a child with Poseidon. I couldn't figure out if it was consensual or not. Just throwing that out there.
Right.
The child went on to found Byzantium.
Byzantium?
Yep.
Cool.
Io went back to Crete at some point. You know that girl that was being raised as a boy? Remember this character?
Yeah. Hello?
Hello? Okay. Well, I'm here. So Io went back to Crete at some point and changed Iphis from biologically female to biologically male when it was time for Iphis to get married.
Interesting.
So there's some sex changes there. So I mentioned that Io was the ancestor of many heroes. Yeah. So I'm just going to give you a list of who some of them were. This is just some more noteworthy ones.
Okay.
Eurydice, not of the Orpheus myth, a different Eurydice. Danae, of Zeus and the Golden Shower fame. She was the mother of Perseus. Semele, who was seduced by Zeus and died before giving birth to Dionysus, the god of wine and madness. Minos, as in the stepfather and owner of the Minotaur. Europa, a woman that Zeus turned himself into a bull in order to flirt with, kidnapped her, took her to Crete, turned back into a non-bull, raped, and had 3 children with before abandoning her. Cadmus, the first king of Thebes. Alcmene, the mother of Hercules and future god.
Oh, fun.
So, Zeus not only tormented Io, but tormented her descendants as well.
Yay!
He disguised himself as a shower of gold to impregnate Danae. He pretended to be a servant to seduce Semele and killed her before she gave birth to Dionysus, and pretended to be Alcmene's husband in order to father Heracles. So, and on some other points, Poseidon got in on the action. But, those stories aren't as popular. So yeah, Io's entire line is messed up because of Zeus. So, You might want to know what all this has to do with a peacock. After Hermes killed Argus, Hera decided to commemorate Argus by putting his 100 eyes on the plumes of a peacock and naming it her official bird. Yeah. That's the story. Very long-winded of how the peacock got its eye feathers. And the only thing we learned from that story is that Zeus is a dick.
Well, we didn't learn that from that story. We've known that. Anytime you encounter Zeus, he's up to some sort of fuckery, and it usually involves rape.
Right? With Poseidon, it's a 50-50 chance on whether it's rape or not.
Which is still not a great metric, you know?
Right? The only one who didn't do rape was Hades.
See, Hades is the best of the Greek pantheon. Change my mind.
Hestia. Hestia, goddess of hearth and home. She did nothing. She even stepped down off of being the top 12 in order to keep a war from brewing. There's literally no stories of Hestia because she got up to nothing.
Which may or may not be a good thing.
Right? But Hestia and Hades are the two best. I mean, Hades would have been a better god if it wasn't for Persephone. Every stupid thing he did, and almost every story about him is because of Persephone.
According to the Britannica website, Hestia is the goddess of hearth, daughter of Cronus and Rhea, one of the 12 Olympian deities. When the gods Apollo and Poseidon became suitors for her hand, she swore to remain a maiden forever. Yeah, so she's basically no. Whereupon Zeus, the king of the gods, bestowed upon her the honor of presiding over all sacrifices. That's a little dark.
Right? Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much the only story about Hestia. And the story where she actually stepped down as one of the top 12 in favor of Dionysus is not actually written anywhere. It's there's all these all these written accounts of where Hestia is one of the top 12. And then there's the Dark Ages in Greek history. And then when they rewrite the 12, she's not on the list. Instead, Dionysus is. So nobody actually knows how Hestia dropped down and Dionysus took over. So in modern times, it's been headcanon that she willingly stepped down and says, here, take my spot on the top 12.
We got peacock feathers. We've got Bluebeard. And what was our definition again? Ah, yes. Abandon hope.
All ye who enter.
And avoid peacock-like women who lack the beauty of a bird.
Right. Okay.
So on to poetry?
On to poetry. Everyone, it is our poetry time. I have this book, Complete Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. And all the poems are at the front of it. So I'm just going to start at the beginning. And for every bit, I'm going to read a poem by Poe. Because it's poetry. It's funnier in my head, I promise. This poem doesn't seem to be very interesting. I'm going to read it anyway and see if it gets interesting. Its name is O Tempora, O Mores, which translates to O Times, O Manners. It is my opinion that you are changing sadly your dominion. I mean, the reign of manners hath long ceased. Men have none at all, or bad at least. As for times, although it's said by many, good old times were far the worst of any, of which sound doctrine I believe each tittle. I think worse than them a little. I've been thinking, isn't that the phrase? I like Yankee words and your Yankee ways. I've been thinking whether it were best to take things seriously or all in jest. Whether with grim Herculetus of yore, weep as he did till his eyes were sore, or rather laugh with him, that queer philosopher, Democritus of Thrace, who used to toss over the page of life and grin at the dog ears, as though he'd say, why, who the devil cares? This is a question which, oh heaven, withdrew a luckless query from a member's claw. Instead of 2 sides, Job has nearly 8, each fit to furnish forth 4 hours' debate. What shall be done? I'll lay on the table, and take up the manners when I am more able. And in the meantime, to prevent all bother, neither laugh with one nor cry with t'other, or deal with in flattery or aspirations of foul, but taking one by each hand, merely growl. I'll growl, you say, my friend, and pray at what? Why, really, sir, I almost forgot. Damn it, sir, I deem it a disgrace that things should stare us so boldly in the face, and daily strut the streets with bows and scrapes, who would be men by imitating apes. I beg your pardon, reader, for the oath. Monkeys make me swear, though something loath. I'm apt to be discursive in my style. But prayer be patient, yet a little while will change me as politicians do. I'll mend my manners and my measures too. So, if you go according to the archaic, he follows logic, but politicians don't. Either way, it's true. Back to the poem. Of all the cities, and I've seen no few, where I have traveled, friend, as well as you, I don't remember one upon my soul, but take it generally upon the whole. As remember, say they like their logic taken, logic is spelt with a K, because divided it may chance be shaken. The pat agreeable, vastly proper, as this for a neat frisky counter hopper.
Interesting. This is not an activity I've ever indulged in.
As this for a neat frisky counter hopper. Here he may reveal his heart's content, bounce like a fish in his own element, toss back his fine curls from their forehead fair, and hop o'er counters with Vester's air. Complete a night what he began a.m., and have cheated ladies dance with them, or at a ball what fair one can escape, the pretty little hand that sold her tape, or who so cold, so callous to refuse, youth who cut the ribbon for her shoes. What? Are you understanding this?
No, I don't understand a lot of Poe.
I don't either. But only one
Yay!
page left. 2 down, 1 to go. One of these fish, our excellence, the beau, God help me, it has been my lot to know, at least by sight, for I'm a timid man, and always keep from laughing if I can. Speak to him, he'll make you grimace. Oh Lord, to be grave exceed the power of face. The hearts of all the ladies are with him, the bright eyes on his Tom and Jerry brim. Dovetailed coat, obtained a cost, well then, those eyes won't turn on anything like men. His very voice is his very voice is musical delight. His form, once seen, becomes a part of sight. In short, his shirt collar, his look, his tone is the beau ideal fancied for Adonis. Philosophers have often held dispute as to the seat of thought in man and brute. But that the power of thought attends the latter, my friend, the beau, has made a settled matter.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know, beau is B-E-A-U, not B-O-W.
So the boyfriend type.
Okay, so the beau ideal is...
The boyfriend.
Yes. Yes, the ideal boyfriend is fancied for Adonis. My friend, the beau, hath made a settled matter, and spite of all dogmas current in all ages, one settled fact is better than 10 sages. For he does think I am oft in doubt, if I can tell exactly what about. Ah, yes, his little foot and ankle trim. 'Tis there the seat of reason lies in him. Wise philosopher will shake his head. He then, of course, must shake his foot instead.
What? I'm very grabbing a foot and shaking it like you would a hand.
Right? That's what it says. Ah, yes, his little foot and ankle trim. Is there the seat of reason lies in him. A wise philosopher would shake his head.
Are they saying that all of his wisdom is in his foot? His feminine foot?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my god.
And so while most people shake their head, he'll shake his foot.
Well, sure, that's where all the wisdom is.
Exactly. That's what they're saying.
Oh my god.
So I guess this beau ideal is a very stupid guy who looks pretty.
Uh-huh.
And follows good manners.
Well, at least he's got that going for him.
Right? He then, of course, must shake his foot instead. At me in vengeance shall that foot be shaken. Another proof of thought I am not mistaken. Because to his cat's eyes I hold a glass. Let him see himself a proper ass. I think he'll take this likeness to himself. If he won't, he shall, a stupid elf. At least the guessing throw the fool in fits. I close the portrait with the name of Pitts.
Okay.
I think he was probably writing this about someone that he didn't like.
Oh, I'm sure. Maybe that's how he ended up dead somewhere strange and far from home.
Right?
Somebody took offense.
Yeah. Because he told them that they shake their foot because they don't have a brain. I mean, the ending of that was good. Beginning was just, what?
Right? It was just really hard to follow beforehand.
Anyway, so that was the poetry segment.
Where you discover just how little we actually understand Poe.
Or poetry.
That's the reason I'm not a fan of Shakespeare.
Right?
Mostly because even though all he really talks about is dicks and sex,
Yeah.
you don't understand half of the words used for it.
Right? Although there is one Shakespeare sonnet I really like.
Yeah.
He's talking about the woman he loves. And he's describing her. And she's absolutely disgusting. He's like, her breath reeks. She has black wires growing from her head.
Well, she has some wiry hair.
Right? And then he's like, but despite all this, I still love her.
Oh.
She's still my heart. It's a really sweet sonnet. Can't remember which one it is. Because all the sonnets are numbered.
Yeah.
They're named. That's like my favorite Shakespeare thing.
So, listeners, if you know what sonnet that is, go ahead and let us know.
I'll skip Poe for poetry and do Shakespeare sonnet if I can find out what one it is.
So,
You know,
yeah.
just to irritate you. Kit.
Poe doesn't. No, Shakespeare doesn't irritate me. I'm just ambivalent. I'm not a great fan of Shakespeare, but maybe as a bit of entertainment at some point in the future, we might do Bards Dispense Profanity.
Right?
Make it some sort of stretch goal or something.
Unless you are a mass murderer, then, you'll die.
If you're a mass murderer, I'm sorry? Why?
Let us interview you.
That's a whole podcast.
No, let's interview a mass murderer. Somebody will just come up like, I'm a mass murderer. Huh?
I would rather interview an author.
True. I mean, authors are mass murderers. I mean, think of all the characters they kill. Wise mentally.
Well, I know one guy who's murdered my aunt many times at this point.
Maybe we should interview him. What's it like to kill the same person over and over again? Is it fun?
So, what made you decide my aunt should die and my cousin should run like a Girl Scout troop that kicks ass?
Anyway, that's Lit Bits.
This has been a Lit Bits from Literati. You can find our podcast, well, the places I have figured out how to put our podcast up at, which would be Spotify and Anchor for now.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Rhett the Best.
Kicking ass.
Signing off.
Have a good day, night, morning, whatever it happens to be when you're hearing.
Have a good existence.
Yes, definitely have a good existence.
Don't let the world get you down. You are a worthwhile person. We love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bubbly.